Good morning to everybody. You have been given a sheet and you may wish to keep an eye on it because some of the PowerPoint slides will actually be on this and it might help you to remember. Don't worry about the reading on the back. You can do that at a reflection time. They're just quotes that I came across. So, in the context of the formation session for new unit leadership teams, with the objective to create a space that favours reflection and dialogue, to build transformational leadership at the service of communion, a genuine ministry to accompany the sisters towards a conscious and responsible fidelity at the service of the charism and the mission of the congregation. So it's in that context that I am going to talk to you about integration. And when we're talking, when we're talking about integration, we're talking really about the GSIF, the Good Shepherd International Foundation, and you see the logo. You're talking about the GSIJPO, the Good Shepherd International Justice Peace Office, and spirituality. So I found it interesting when the topic was given to me that we have two offices and spirituality. And we have these logos presented to represent the GSIF, the GSIJPO, and spirituality. And I was invited to share real stories and experiences of how I live and experience integration in the ministry mission that I do at the Good Shepherd International Justice Peace Office. And I thought about how would I show integration. So one very simple way was to try and superimpose the logos on top of each other, or alongside each other, or put them together in some way, and I got this kind of image. Integration. But then when I was preparing this, it was St. Valentine's Day. And I have an artist that I follow every week. She does a graphic for the Sunday liturgy every week. She's from Australia. Susan Daly is her name. And she provided this graphic for Ash Wednesday. And we have Valentine's Day. And we have the cross, because that's what Lent is all about, following Jesus to the cross and death. And then you have the ashes. And I said, integration. Valentine's Day, the cross, and the ashes. And as I did some research and getting ready for this sharing, I discovered that the contemplative sisters have integrated justice with the essential elements in this graphic. They talk there of the primacy of God, contemplation, and many other things, vows and life, but here you have justice. So another aspect of integration. So we're going to move from just thinking about integration, looking at pictures, to asking what makes a diamond shine. A diamond is a small rock that shines, and I'm likening that diamond to a ministry that shines. What makes the diamond shine? What makes the ministry shine? The short answer is that they are expertly cut and polished to maximize the diamond's brilliance. And today, For our ministries, we find that they shine if there is a ministry strategic plan, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. But more technically, there's a light shining. And that light shining on the diamond, I liken to God, grace, spirituality, whatever you want to call that light. And this light shining on the diamond causes reflection, refraction, and dispersion. Don't worry too much about those three words, we'll be coming back to them. Shining ministries. I said the ministries are like diamonds, they shine. Where are they shining today in the congregation? Well, I thought it was amazing that Pope Francis would visit 2 ministries of Good Shepherd this year, with the end of last year and I think the beginning of this year. First with Bianca in Colombia, and then with Nelly in Chile, where he visited with the women prisoners. During the 56th Commission on Social Development, we had a young woman from the services of Good Shepherd Services in New York present at a panel on youth employment and the difficulties of getting employment if you have had difficulties in your family life, family breakdown, lack of access to education, etc., etc. And then, of course, through the GSIF, we've had shining ministries. We're celebrating one of them today, Mahila. But this shining was launched really with Maisha from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we have Catherine here, our fearless leader, in terms of bringing forward that ministry. So these are all moments of I think, great God's grace shining through what we do and it being recognized in the world. So, I think I've said all that. But what I do want to highlight is that at the moment we're talking about the implementation of child protection policies. And this also is to safeguard children and is a way of having our ministry shine. And also, Good Shepherd currently are very visible in the migration negotiations that are happening at the UN, through really the work of Cecily Kern, my colleague in the office. And this is what the Ministry of Migration shining at the UN looks like. We have been at it all of last year, from 2016 into 2017, and 2018 there was a stock-taking phase in December 2017 into 2018, and then the negotiation phase is currently happening down here in this last box. So this is what it looks like at the United Nations in terms of a ministry shining. Let me go back to the reflection, refraction, and dispersion. Reflection. This is the light that hits the diamond, and it's immediately bounced back to make it shine. And while the glimmer is impressive, it's only the very tip of the true radiance that the diamond holds. And I suppose we can say that about all of our ministries that maybe don't have monitoring and evaluation and strategic plans, etc., etc. They're shining. But moving ahead, only a portion of the light that hits the diamond is reflected. Only a small piece. The rest travels through it, through the diamond. As the light moves through the diamond, it is shattered and fractured, creating the sparkle that diamonds are known to have. And this is refraction. In essence, diamonds are tiny, complicated prisms. The light enters through the top, and then it is angled around and inside of the diamond before being aimed back out towards the top and out through the surface. So you have, it's God's grace, that light. Yes, hitting the surface of the ministry, but traveling through the ministry and being reflected back out. You have images there of diamonds shining. It's not easy to get the diamond to sparkle and shine in exactly the right way. And don't we know it if we're doing strategic plans? Trained professionals need to know just how to cut and polish each stone to get the best results. Likewise with the ministry, and justice and peace and spirituality, it's not easy to get to sparkle. We need to be formed and trained spiritually and professionally to allow God's grace, to allow the Spirit to shine through. Isn't that a nice diamond sparkling? Look at all the colours that are in it, light and dark. This refraction and dispersion also create natural light and dark areas in the reflected light, depending on where the light hits along the planes of the diamond. These dark areas in the shine may seem counterproductive, but really they are the magic needed to achieve the diamond's trademark brilliance. The dark magnifies the intensity of the light. The cut also determines just how brilliant a diamond is. If the shape is too deep or too shallow, much of the light will get lost and never bounce back as it's supposed to. Likewise with ministry, if strategic plan is not undertaken, the ministry may not shine as it's supposed to. So I think we can earn a lot from the diamond and draw an analogy and draw learning with regard to our ministry. And this here is the light traveling through and then being reflected back out and dispersed. And what you get is the rainbow colours. So this is the diamond shining, and likewise our ministries shining. To a lesser extent, the clarity of the diamond also affects the shine. Blemishes on the surface of the diamond limit the amount of light that can enter the diamond. Inclusions prevent the light from moving freely within the gem. So after the diamond is painstakingly cut and shaped to perfectly bounce light, the final step in its completion is to carefully polish it to its final level of shine. Polishing has a lasting effect on the diamond's brilliance. Any residual roughness or exterior blemishes are very gently eroded away. In this way, diamonds are like almost anything else. A thorough polish can really bring out the brilliance. And can we liken this polishing to monitoring and evaluation and accountability? We don't like doing it, but it's most important for the shine and the brilliance. And remember, God's light, grace, spirituality, whatever it is that is motivating us in that ministry. Bring all of those together, and we have shining ministries. So reflect on the diamond. How does it speak to you of integration? So I'm moving now from the diamond to justice, peace, and human rights. And what does that mean in terms of integration? And this is maybe a little historical journey at one level, but is most important in our lives. Going back to the Vatican Council and the document, The Church in the Modern World. And this is what we were reflecting on in the Magnificat as we looked at various aspects of it this morning. The joy and hope, the grief and anguish of the people of our time, especially of those who are poor and afflicted in any way, are the joy and hope, the grief and anguish of the followers of Christ. That's the Magnificat in the words of the Church in the Modern World. Justice is a constitutive dimension of the gospel. Action on behalf of justice and participation in the transformation of the world fully appear to us as a constitutive dimension of the preaching of the gospel, or in other words, of the Church's mission for the redemption of the human race and its liberation from every oppressive situation. And this quotation is taken from Justice in the World, the World Synod of Catholic Bishops in 1971. Justice, a constitutive element of the gospel. It's not something outside or something attached on. It's a constitutive dimension. And then looking at the journey of the congregation, certainly influenced by Vatican II and by the Synod of Bishops in 1971. The 25th General Chapter in 1985 declared justice as an integral part of our mission of reconciliation. An integral part. Since then, the congregation has called us to express justice in all areas of our life, not just in the ministry, but in the community, in our personal living. The congregation adopted structures to support this commitment, notably the NGO work of our affiliation with the United Nations since 1996. And now it's under the Good Shepherd International Justice Peace Office and the Good Shepherd International Foundation since 2008, and the Spirituality Centre. So these structures have been put together to help us integrate what we're doing. And in the late 90s, a broad justice network began with unit JP contact persons, and sometimes today we have teams in the various units. As the congregation's commitment grows, the role of local JP contacts is more vital than ever. I believe this within the units, that the role of the JP contact is more important than ever. This kind of is a graphic that tries to put together an awful lot of things, an awful lot of structures. It's a global way of looking at Good Shepherd. And here in the center, you have the GSIJP office. Maybe with integration and reflecting on it today, the GSIF should be in there and the spirituality too. But in actual fact, they're out here because it's how the relationship works around the, how the relationship works around the Justice Peace Office. And all of these blue circles, they are all units and regions around the circle of leaders in the various continents, and also paralleling the United Nations structures with regions and regional offices. For example, if we go here to Ramoa, we have 2 UN offices. We have one in Addis Ababa, the Economic Commission for Africa, and we have one in Beirut, which is ESCWA for Western Asia. And as I say, you have Addis Ababa and Beirut. But if you go to, where are we? Asia Pacific, the JP contacts, the units, the Circle of Leaders, the Asia Pacific Circle, and there you have UN ESCAP in Bangkok. So just trying to integrate the UN structure and the congregational structure. Then you have all these roles on this side, and you have the issues that we address on this side over here. The issues of structural injustice, women and girls, human trafficking, migration, economic justice, poverty eradication. And they're all the themes of the position papers. And then you have the people in New York, Cecily and myself, and you have Miriam from Germany, who will eventually arrive in Geneva to take up the work of human rights in Geneva. And there is nobody currently representing in Vienna, which follows human trafficking. Sometimes I go to Vienna myself if there's something very specific on with regard to human trafficking. We've done that. Now, just, I find it fascinating to look at our constitutions, particularly paragraphs 2 to 9, because they give us everything we need in terms of integration. Jesus, the Good Shepherd, calls, and we're continuing his redemptive mission in the church, rooted in baptism, turning towards God in love, gives us totally to Christ's saving mission. And the Constitution says these are inseparable realities of our vocation. Inseparable. Article 3 outlines the biblical aspects. Article 4 moves on and says the church entrusts to us a share in her mission of reconciliation. And 5 talks about it being interrelational. And Article 6 says our specific orientation is to girls and women. And isn't that highlighted beautifully in the Mahila film? Article 6 is my favorite, really. Our commitment to reconciliation demands, doesn't say if you like, or if you wish, or next year, demands that we promote justice and peace in a world disturbed by sin and conflict. And we were looking at that this morning in the prayer, the sin and the conflict in the world. The sisters from Sri Lanka told me things are very difficult in Sri Lanka at the moment. Ethiopia is on the verge of civil war. So many things are happening. We collaborate to help bring about change in whatever condemns others to live a marginalized life. And that is echoed so eloquently in the Mahila film. This witness to justice must possess those characteristics of the merciful love which are of the essence of the gospel and the social teachings of the church. And we go to prayer, And glory be to God, in the quotation in the Constitutions on prayer, we hear from Micah. This is what God asks of you, only this, that you act justly. Here we are thinking about prayer, and how am I going to say my prayers? And we're told this is what God asks of you, act justly, love tenderly, and walk humbly with your God. We discover God's presence, this is in the prayer chapter, in the heart of the world, in the pain of its people, and in their desire for good. And I think we're back then to, again, Gaudium et Spes, the church in the modern world. And there's a statute, 9, and it was written many long years ago before we were talking about strategic plans. So look how insightful it was, and maybe prophetic and far-looking, to help overcome the divisions and inequalities. Today everybody's talking about inequalities, not so much 20 or 30 years ago, in which the majority of people live. We have a responsibility for developing in ourselves and in our society an international concern for justice. This concern urges us to a periodic review of our attitudes, ministry, use of goods, and manner of relating. There's the whole thing about monitoring and evaluation and accountability. And it was Barbara Davis from Australia who had this insight with regard to establishing the whole link with the United Nations and of getting a special consultative status. So how did she see it? And the quotation that was on the previous slide. She wrote, "To fight off a wolf, one cannot possibly at the same time cuddle the lamb. To perform the function of nurturing and caring is very important. But these are times when it is necessary to turn attention and to give one's energy to the struggles against what oppresses and threatens. It is because of the value of the sheep, because the shepherd prizes them so highly, that he enters into this struggle. The shepherd, as the one who fights off the ravaging attack of the wolf, even at the cost of his life, is a far more daunting, perhaps less attractive image than that of the shepherd looking for the lost sheep or lamb and carrying it on his shoulders. But surely it represents one of the very necessary tasks of anyone who calls herself a good shepherd." I think that's a beautiful quotation, and it draws, we all love to be with the lambs and cuddling them and nurturing, we all love that. But to be out fighting with a wolf is something else. So, for integration, as I see it, we use a gospel, constitutional, professional, world lens to focus. We have to get out the magnifying glass, and we have to look in all the different places and bring them together. The gospel, constitution, what profession have we, what are we expert in? Is it human trafficking? Is it migration? Is it child care? What is it? What's happening in the world? And at the Good Shepherd International Justice Peace Office, I think vision and mission are being put forward as very important. The beginning of the strategic plan. What's your vision? What's your mission? For us at the GSIJP office, we see a world permeated by God's love, where justice and human rights support the dignity of every girl, woman, and child. And we work to challenge and change policies that exclude and systems that dehumanize. And that truly is the work at the United Nations, challenging the systems and the policies that exclude and dehumanize. And very much to the fore in terms of the migration processes and negotiations that are going on currently. I have given you out this here. You have the logo of the GSIJP office. Anybody know what all this is here? The SDGs, very good. So we have them in colour, the Sustainable Development Goals, and then this is a rendering of the Congregational Direction Statement as applied to the office. I gave everybody one this morning. If anybody wants more, I have them. So, my own experience. This happened to me last year. And my question is, what could a cathedral plan and a map of Manhattan have in common? So this happened during my retreat. We were asked to bring in a map of where we live. So I was making my retreat in Dublin, so I brought in a map of Manhattan because that's where I live. And nobody else had a map of Manhattan. They all had little maps of Ireland. And during the course of the session, we were exploring what the structure of a cathedral looks like. So you have the sanctuary and the side chapels and the nave and the baptistry and the sacristy and all the rest of it. So looking at all of that. And we were asked to mark our maps as to where we go, for that map. What do you do? How do you move around in that space? So of course, like I'd be up and down on the subway, I'd be out to little parks to see, can I see the sky above the buildings? I'd be running over to the East River to have a walk along the river for the water. And of course, up and down to the UN and the office. So we were asked to put the structure of the cathedral on the map. And the most wonderful thing happened for me. The map of Manhattan became the cathedral. I couldn't wait to get back to Manhattan to see how it felt after this happened. So up here, Central Park became the sanctuary of the church. And the subways up and down had to do with the nave of the church, activity up and down. And there's different little green areas here and there, little parks. They were the side chapels. I'd go to Washington Square Park, or I'd go into Stuyvesant Park or whatever. They became the side chapels. You go to pray to somebody, to light a candle, whatever. This is what was happening for me. And then, as I was working through it, all of a sudden it jumped out that the sacristy and the United Nations were one. That the United Nations was the sacristy of the world, preparing through policy and through international agreements, etc., preparing the bread and wine for the world. For me, it was just mind-blowing. And I always was fascinated with the structure of Manhattan. It's all in parallel lines, north, south, east, west. So east-west, on the morning going to work on the bus, if you look to the east, between the streets, you see the sun rising. And going home in the evening, if you look the other direction, you see the sun setting. And these became for me the windows of the cathedral. And you get lovely, depending on the cloud, where the sun is, etc., you get all kinds of formations and colours. And then along the East River in particular for me, where I go for a walk, this became part of Ezekiel and the water flowing out from the temple. So I show that and I say to you because it was the most marvellous moment of integration. We've said all that. So one policy that I have been promoting almost since I went to the United Nations and learned about it is social protection floors. And last year, in January, I was invited to Sweden by the Church of Sweden, the Protestant Church of Sweden, to engage with them in a theological reflection on social protection floors. Now, I was the only Catholic there, but it was a fascinating moment to be invited. And they used the word diakonia. We'd be talking about our ministries and our missions. It's the same thing. They used the Greek word diakonia. And like we'd know of kerygma and koinonia, we'd have heard those words in our theology. But diakonia became very much alive for me as a result of this. And every morning there was a gospel reflection, and some of the bishops, some of them women, would give the reflection. And one of the reflections was the Canaanite woman. You know, her daughter was sick and she came to Jesus, and there was this dialogue about, like, who are you to ask me? And, you know, you're an outsider, you should be out of here, you're not one of us. And she says, but even the dogs eat the scraps that fall from the master's table. And Jesus said, you know, okay, go home, your daughter is healed. Inclusion. So from being excluded to being included. You can look at it from the whole issue of women and women's rights and International Day and how are women included. And a question was asked, would this woman find space in a diaconal intervention? They're the Swedish words. But would this woman find space in our ministries? That basically is the question. And the woman was persistent. She wanted to get something done. She wanted the right to live for her daughter and herself. Help me, heal my child. And she wasn't really talking about charity. She was talking about the right to live. And it's very interesting, in Mahila, it says, charity kills initiative. And I couldn't get over it when I heard those words in the film. Charity kills initiative. Yes, charity is a gospel imperative, but sometimes it can disempower people. But rights build people up. So, a question here for reflection. What would you need to know to read the right to social protection floors into Matthew's Gospel on the story of the Canaanite woman? We're almost finished. I don't know how we're time-wise. We're almost finished because what I'm going to do now is just go through a number of documents, and I'm not asking you even to remember them, because you'll have opportunities again to look back on them. The first one is well known to you, Laudate Si, published in June 2015, and really bringing forward the Church's social teaching, particularly in this world of growing inequality, where 8 people own 90% of the wealth, according to an Oxfam report. So Pope Francis, excellent in terms of his critique, inequality, the structures, the unjust structures, and the whole environmental issue, and bringing those together. Not so much on women, not so much. In Addis Ababa, in July of that same year, 2015, there was this third conference on financing for development, trying to urge the world to put money into development. The resources are there. There's enough for everybody's need, but not enough for everybody's greed. You see, so you can look at it like that. I went to Addis Ababa for that conference. Then in September 2015, there was the Sustainable Development Goals, all 17 of them, supposed to end poverty, end inequality, have a just world, care for the environment, relationships, everything great. That's our dream, that's what we want. And a sister, a medical mission sister, she was talking about the SDGs one day, and she said, it can be summed up in John 10:10. And of course I jumped out of my skin because John 10:10 is very important to us. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. So this is the gospel quotation to go with the meaning of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I've picked out 1, 2, 3, 4, 16 and 8 there around the gender equality as where we do a lot of our focus. And then some people were being very creative, and they put the Sustainable Development Goals as a Christmas tree. And lo and behold, the other day in Ireland, I saw that the goals now are all green for St. Patrick's Day. Because I had this already prepared, I didn't start changing it and putting in new material, but all green. So making the goals your own, bringing them home, inserting them into the community and into your ministries is very important. Then the integration, engaging in the 2030 agenda through the lens of Laudate Si. This is a publication that has come out. So this integration is happening everywhere. They're saying you can't get rid of poverty if you don't focus on gender equality. And you can't have gender equality if you don't have climate change and climate resilience and all the rest of it. So you can't focus on one thing, you have to be your eye on everything. So this will be in 3 languages and available as well. And then in December 2015 you had the Paris Agreement with regard to climate. A marvelous moment when the world came together to say, yes, we will lower the temperature of the world. I don't think it's happening, but we're trying. And then last year, in 2016, we had the New York Declaration on Refugees and Migrants. A historical moment in bringing not so much refugees because they had already been part of the UN from the 1951 Convention on Refugees, but bringing the whole issue of migration within the United Nations, a historic moment. And then in this year, at the Global Compact, how and what kind of laws and regulations should we have for safe, orderly and regular migration? So that's all in the negotiation at the moment. And then integration. For this year, we send out a prayer to the provinces, a reminder according to the when the candle is burning. And this year we're saying we come together to welcome, protect, promote and integrate all migrants and refugees. In a spirit of compassion, let us embrace those fleeing from war and hunger, are forced by discrimination, persecution, poverty and environmental degradation to leave their homelands. So taking the quotation from Pope Francis, but I'm linking that then, as you can see, with the Sustainable Development Goals, and linking it through the office saying, like, we join you in this struggle. Claire Nolan, many years ago, prepared 3 manuals, and they're in 3 languages on the website with regard to a journey of justice peace. There is more material in there than would serve anybody for a lifetime of study. And it's set up in terms of workbooks and plans and short, you can take it for 1 week or 10 weeks, whatever way you want. But those resources are there, very rich, and integrating the spiritual and the justice piece. And linked up with that, and almost at the end, coming soon. You know, good advertising always says coming soon. It makes you excited about something. Coming soon. So what's coming soon? The position papers are going to be updated according to the documents I have just outlined, because they were already totally out of date. Thinking has moved ahead, there are new documents, new ways of reflecting on things. So they will be updated, they're in the final reading, they're nearly ready for layout and for printing. And of course our hope is that these will form part of the fabric of community, of your reflection, of your prayer, of your ministry, of your policy, of your advocacy, of everything that you do. I think we're keeping very much to the themes that we had, and I have read them because Claire had them out for the last reading, and they're very dense. There's so much packed into it that really every sentence and every line you could take and analyse and do a study on. But it's marvellous to get it all together in like front page, back page. And I was saying, oh, Claire, put in this. And she was like, can't put it in, no room. Put in, no, that's, you know. So, I mean, this is it. But you might even be finding things that you want to put in. And this is the opportunity. You develop your own. You add to them. You elaborate on them. So, a marvellous moment, as I say, coming soon. And, yes, thank you. So,